Hello, everyone. My name is Kim Warner, the Director of Social Work and Bereavement at Hospice of Orange and Sullivan. My friends and colleagues, Donna and Erica, are here together with me today to reach out to you in our community. We are all together in the pandemic, and we thought it would be helpful if we talked a little bit about how we're trying to cope and how we're trying to encourage our patients and families and our friends in making it through this pandemic together. We've developed a seminar here for you to share among anyone you know. We've entitled it Pressing Through Together, because that's what we're doing. This pandemic surprised all of us and has made it hard for us to know what's next. But we know as clinicians that we have lots of resilience as a human quality, and we will use our resilience and all the exercises we can think of to help us through the stress. So you see here, we present to you, Pressing Through Together, Building Resilience. I start today with a quote that talks about our capacity as a human being, each of us. The human capacity for burden is more like bamboo, far more flexible than you and I believe at first glance. And that's true for us. We try hard to know what to do when we are faced with anxiety, know what to do when we're faced with fears and feelings of depression. So with all the adjustments we've had to make in the last month and looking forward to what is in front of us as a nation, we think about how resilient can we be. I start with our first slide. We know that the World Health Organization and the Center for Disease Control and Prevention has talked to us a lot about the science of what's happening, the health concerns that we need to be wise of. And so this seminar is about sharing to you how to absorb that science and what to do with our own emotions. It's such an uncertain time. We know it's important to read from credible sources and not get overwhelmed with the amount of information coming at us, to know when to step back, to listen to our professionals, and move through this life living while we are going through this pandemic. So the next thing we think of is, what is it that happens to our emotions? When we have a big distress in our own lives, we tend to reach out to our families and our friends. In this situation, everyone else is going through the same emotional distress, and that makes it that much more compounded and magnified. Like in a family system, it is also true in our community that one person may feel helpless while another person feels completely vulnerable and fearful, and another person is so anxious they can't sit still. We all are being asked to be isolated, and we get exhausted in trying to make adjustments all the time, every day, something new. It can be feeling a great sense of distress. Our eating habits change, our sleeping habits change, how our routine is and has all changed. And as humans, we tend to feel comfort in our routines, and with everything needing adjustment, we can get exhausted and worry about what's in the future, and can we sustain ourselves, and can we keep ourselves calm and adapting. So today we want to know that we have had many losses. We've had the loss of being with our friends. We've had the loss of being at work. We may have had the loss of our health. And now there are even new losses anticipated of how we're going to manage. So what we want to do today is to give you some tips of how to build into a new routine and how to build ways of taking care of ourselves. Donna, would you come and ask and speak to us about the impact of stress.
Thank you, Kim. So on the slide that's up in front of you right now, it's giving an example of all the different ways that stress impacts us. Kim covered all of the emotional ways it impacts us, and I want to draw your attention to other ways. So in the second little icon here, what does stress show up in your body? Sometimes it can show up in your neck when you're experiencing a lot of tension in your neck. It can show up in your stomach. Stress impacts our bodies in many ways. And then you may also notice changes in your behavior, where you may find yourself being very irritable toward family members, toward friends. You may have difficulty sleeping. Cognitively, stress can show up in your thinking. You may not be thinking clearly. You may be feeling cloudy-headed or fuzzy. And it's very easy when we're experiencing the emotional stress to sort of detach our head from our body. And the point of this little slide here is to how do we bring it all together? How do we pay attention to our entire body? On the next slide, I thought it would be nice to kind of kick off a little talk about how we can help is through this poem by Thich Nhat Hanh. Though we all have seeds of fear within us, we must learn not to water those seeds and instead nourish our positive qualities, those of compassion, understanding, and loving kindness. And I'd like to draw your attention to this photo. I picture the cement as all of the stress, all of the anxiety, all of the negative emotions that's so prevalent today, and the little plant as positive emotions, and positive emotions that we can water so that they grow, so we're not feeling so overwhelmed by all the negative emotions. On the next slide, I'd like to introduce a toolkit to you that you can use to help combat a lot of the fear, worry, anxiety, and panic that you're feeling. So the goal here is how do we create and enhance our positive emotions to help neutralize all of those negative ones. The first bullet point here I want to introduce to you to practice, if you think it may help, is to breathe. It may sound simplistic, but actually stopping at different intervals throughout the day, closing your eyes for a minute, taking in a deep breath, and exhaling can help to calm and center you. Even if you're not feeling calm and centered, it tricks your brain into thinking that you are, and it can help to relieve some of that anxiety. The next point and tool I'd like to introduce is something called what if scenarios. What if scenarios can happen automatically in your mind. An example would be, what if I get COVID-19, end up in a hospital, intubated, and I die? What if I never get another job? What if my son is out driving and gets into a car accident? So these are all negative events of the future that you're making up in your head. So our advice to you to help counteract that is, if you're going to play the role of a fortune teller and start making up things in your head, why not make up a happy scenario? So at different points during the day, if you notice your emotions shift, you are feeling okay, feeling positive, you notice your emotions shift into a negative feeling, maybe stop and ask yourself, what am I thinking? What am I telling myself? And on the next slide, we have some more tools that we'd like to continue to introduce. The first one is, what activities do you do personally that actively engage you? And not only engage you, but you may find challenging. Maybe it could be creating a big garden, maybe cleaning out a closet, maybe reading a good book, maybe something, maybe working during the day and engaging yourself in your work, writing a paper. Look for something that can engage you and help to balance out all of the fear and worry. Another tool is amusement. What makes you laugh? Maybe your pet makes you laugh. Maybe your dog cracks you up, or your cat. Maybe funny videos online crack you up. Maybe calling an old friend on the telephone and laughing about old times. Look for ways that you can bring joy into your life through amusement. And something else I'd like to introduce, and you may have heard this before, is to perform random acts of kindness. And there are 3 ways that this can benefit you. The first one is you, as the giver, performing an act of kindness. Maybe writing a thank you card to someone in your life about something they did. Maybe writing an old professor, a teacher, a neighbor. It can be reaching out in a very simplistic way to thank them. Even helping a stranger, maybe ordering some food and having it delivered. The second way is to witness acts of kindness. I was watching the news and I saw where a gentleman, an elderly man, his wife is in a nursing home, and he would go and visit her every day. And after COVID-19 hit, he was not allowed to visit. So some of his children and friends got together, rented a forklift. He got into the forklift, they lifted him up to the window so he could speak with his wife. And for me, that brought so much joy. And you might notice sometimes when you see someone doing something kind for someone else, it brings you joy. And also, of course, receiving it, getting a random thank you, having someone doing something for you. Another tool is practicing gratitude. Gratitude helps bring you to the present moment, helps to center you. A simple way to practice gratitude is thinking about your day, maybe stopping and thinking throughout the day, what is something that you're thankful for? Maybe you had a great conversation with a friend on a phone. Maybe you're grateful you have your health. Maybe you're grateful for a good meal. Looking for ways, things that you're thankful for, and then looking for ways to reach out to other people and thank them for things that they've done to you that had a strong impact in your life. The next tool is physical activity. Maybe get out and take a walk in your neighborhood, maybe go for a hike, looking for ways to keep social distancing, and at the same time being able to get out there and walk around and get into nature, get into some fresh air and take in some deep breathing. And of course, eating well, trying to pull ourselves back from things that aren't so healthy and trying to increase the good food, healthy food that builds our immune system, that brings good energy into our bodies. Another one is spiritual practice. Maybe you have a meditation practice, church, mosque, some way that you can connect with others. And there are a lot of ashrams and churches and spiritual places that are hosting services online or videotaping it so you can watch it at a later date. And of course, staying connected with others, looking for ways to reach out to family, to friends, whether it's through Zoom, through FaceTime, through the telephone, keeping in contact with others. And the last tool that we'd like to offer, savoring delights of the present moment. This is a way that something enjoyable that you do, you can sort of stretch it out a little bit, linger it, let it last a little bit longer. It might be eating a delicious piece of chocolate cake. Rather than gobbling it down, take one bite at a time and really savor it. Let the enjoyment of that cake last. Maybe seeing something beautiful, some beautiful flowers, and you may tend to walk by, and instead of walking by thinking it's beautiful, linger with the beautiful flowers for a while and take it in, stretch out those moments. And now I want to turn it back over to Kim to speak with you about helping children.
Thank you, Donna. I appreciate all of the tips that you gave us that we can incorporate into our family. Right now, we know that the children are home with the adults, and it's making the house full. And we have challenges and blessings with both of that. So we want to be mindful of the different age brackets of children and what happens to each age bracket with stress and with the challenges they have when they're faced with a trauma. So the first thing is to think about our preschoolers. They may exhibit fear of being alone during this time. They may talk about bad dreams. They're hearing a lot of bits and pieces of the media, bits and pieces of the conversations that are happening in the household, and it brings fear to them. They might have a change of appetite, and they might have clinging behaviors to you or to someone in the home where they're wanting to feel more grounded and more safe. So the way to help them feel that safety is to help give them avenues for expressing their feelings. Play is the best source for preschoolers to experience their feelings and to express them without the words because they can't come up with the words. So reenacting with puppets, with other kinds of toys, with blocks, even with Play-Doh. They do really well with mediums, painting, crayons, murals are all ways children do well with expressing their feelings. So I would encourage the adults to help with build predictability within the home. Predictability of when we do have breakfast and when we do have work time and when we do have play time, so that they can feel that security of what to expect. The same goes true for our school age children. Balance and predictability are big markers in feeling secure. You might notice that the school age children are showing irritable behavior. They also might be clinging. They might complain of headaches or feeling stomach aches. That's usually an indicator of stress and not knowing how else to explain it. They may compete for the adult's attention in the home, which can be very stress producing for the family, that the adults themselves are under stress, and then they have their children acting in a way that they really need firm limits and firm boundaries. So remind yourself as the adult in the house that as they seemingly act out, it's really their way without words saying, I need security and I need those boundaries. Encourage questions, answer them simple. They also are listening to the news, and to give them basic, really concrete answers will be the best way to help them. With the adolescents, they really don't know whether to respond to this crisis in our community as an adult or as a child. That's their dilemma all through adolescence, and that's true here. They will need their routines if they have chores and behaviors in their household, expectations in the household of responsibility. Those would be best to have maintained, and then encouraging them to talk to you adults when they have a quiet time. Assure them that you want them a part of the routine, that the family is together on this. It's not an isolated experience within the home setting, that you are all in this together. The community is in this together. So sometimes with adults and sometimes with the adolescents, simply a hand on the shoulder and the adult saying, I'm here for you. I do care. I see how hard you're struggling. I appreciate what you're doing in the household. That makes a big difference. They too are trying to figure out how to do academics online, having a lot of stress that way, being dependent on themselves to try to redirect. So the more encouragement and affirmation you can provide to them, the more they'll feel like they're doing it as best as they can. So now I want to think about with them, the families also talk about the stigma of this disease. The COVID-19 has kind of an experience now where when that's spoken, a lot of us go, oh, and some people will feel shame and some people will feel embarrassment if they have it or they don't know if they have it. The science is changing, so people aren't sure how to handle it. There used to be very rare seeing someone with a mask on in the community. Now everybody's being asked to wear covers on their faces. That kind of understanding that we want to normalize everything that we're doing, that everybody is the same, whether we're sick or not. We're fearful of the virus. We're not fearful of the person. We're fearful of getting sick. We're not fearful of the doctor's office. So we want to treat everybody with the same respect, whether the age bracket, this virus can affect any race, any nationality, any age bracket, any ethnicity, any kind of economic status. So we want to show empathy for one another and support with one another in the family, in our neighborhood, in the community, in our church community, in our school community. It is our responsibility as adults to help the children understand that we will combat that stigma, and that the more we say this is a national effort in how we are adjusting, the less you are perpetuating that stigma. So crisis brings us bad news, and many times bad news brings us a stigma. And I've asked Erica to see if she could talk to us about that.
Thank you, Kim. This is Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's classic model for the grieving process, but it also applies to help guide in decision-making and communications during a crisis like we're going through right now with COVID-19. So there are 5 stages, and I'll go through them with you and provide you with some examples. So stage 1 is denial. You could be feeling disbelief or resistant to the facts. You could be thinking, why this can't be happening? Are you serious? Stage 2 is anger. You could be feeling outrage or blaming. You could be blaming others, blaming a group of people, blaming a person. Could be thinking, this is ridiculous. Why didn't anyone get ahead of this? Stage 3 is bargaining. And this is where you're making trade-offs. So it's a bad situation right now, but you're hoping for a better outcome. One thought you might be thinking is, this is painful now, but it's for the best. Stage 4 is depression, where you could be feeling helpless or hopeless. And you could be having very valid thoughts of, how am I going to pay my rent? Or will my business survive this prolonged shutdown? Stage 5 is acceptance. This is where you're exploring options and moving on. You could be thinking, this is what's happening, and therefore this is what we need to do to respond. If we act fast, we act decisively, we can save more lives. Next, we'll talk about grief in the time of COVID-19. So what is grief? Grief is a term used to describe the natural reaction to the loss of a loved one. As the full impact of the coronavirus unfolds, some people in our community, and maybe yourself, are being faced with death of loved ones. Physical distancing and travel restrictions could make it difficult to have those traditional funeral services. This is something we call in the mental health community as disenfranchised grief, which is where families are denied the right to grieve due to new societal norms. Next, we'll discuss how this impacts you and your family. So you may not be able to be with your loved one in person. You may not be able to say goodbye. You may have limited support from your community due to social distancing. This also could limit your religious and spiritual support due to closures. You could be asking those why questions. Why me? Why my loved one? Why now? And it's important to consider the impact this all has on our children and teens. With no school or community support, with no sports or extracurricular activities, they have limited contact with their friends. So it's important to make sure they're involved as much as possible based on their age. You can use social media as a remembrance, and your child or teenager can help make those posts or make those pages for you. They can make a slideshow where you can send it out to your family and friends, and this can include music or home movies. It's important to keep them involved because this is where they start their own grieving process. Next, we'll talk about funeral adaptations, and you may already be noticing these. Funerals have a great therapeutic value during the grieving process, and unfortunately during this pandemic, this is being interrupted. Memorial services, wakes, shivas, graveside services are all being limited due to social distancing guidelines. But the good news is burials and cremations are still going forward. Just make sure you check with your local state requirements. Next, we'll talk about how to honor your loved one during a pandemic. Private gatherings for immediate family members, for funeral services, memorial services, cemetery services are still allowed. There's just a limited number, and this is based off of the specific funeral home or the specific cemetery. The good news is you can live stream the funeral. You can use Zoom or Facebook Live in order to have family members who couldn't be there be more involved. You can also record the funeral and send it out at a later time so everyone can see the service. A great thing that the funeral directors are doing right now is allowing the families the ability to schedule a memorial service or a funeral service at a later date once the restrictions are lifted. Family and friends can still provide support virtually. There's a wonderful technology today that can allow for this. If you have a family member or maybe yourself who sings or plays an instrument, you can have them do a virtual live concert playing your loved one's favorite song, or maybe their wedding song, or just a song that brings up a happy memory. You can also pre-record a playlist using YouTube or Amazon Music or Apple Music or any music streaming service with all of your loved one's favorite music and send it out to family and friends. It's important to remember that businesses are still open and more than ever are providing delivery services. So you can still send those flowers, you can still send that food. The post office is still delivering mail, so you can send those sympathy cards or those thinking of you cards. Another thing you can do that doesn't necessarily have to involve technology is planning a moment of silence or reciting a prayer or lighting a candle in memory of your loved one. You can tell all of your family and friends that at Friday at 3 o'clock, you're going to light a candle in memory of mom. And at Friday at 3 o'clock, everybody does that so that everybody feels involved in honoring your loved one. Next, we'll talk about adapting to your loss. So it does take time to adapt to all changes that happen when someone close dies. Everyone has a different timetable, so don't compare yourself with somebody else who is grieving. Everybody grieves a little differently. Surround yourself with loved ones. The presence of close friends, loved ones, and family members is very important. Keep in mind that physical distancing does not mean emotional distancing. You can stay connected with these loved ones through text messaging, social media online, phone calls, FaceTime. There's a lot of available options for you. And we do have more in common than you think, especially all of us going through this crisis together. Be patient with yourself and with one another. Take good care of yourself. Find pleasurable activities and make sure to engage in them. Write down your experiences. Writing down your emotions and your feelings really puts a name to what you're going through. And with that, I'll leave you with this quote. One day we will remember how lucky we were to have known their love with wonder and not grief. And now I'll send it back to Kim to talk about caring for yourself and love and others.
Thank you, Erica. Those thoughts about how to make adaptations is really the key right now, isn't it? We can't forget that when we make adaptations, that we also adapt how we take care of ourselves. Usually we've had a rhythm of our lives and a rhythm of how we made sure we get enough sleep or made sure that we ate well or that we checked in on someone we cared about. With a crisis, that tends to go out the window. And so I ask that we give ourselves permission to let ourselves do that. We do need to make adjustments so that we do our exercise and we eat well and we have family time and we have quiet time, that we think about others as well as ourselves. One of the parts that Donna was speaking of about expressing gratitude, right now lots of first responders are receiving gratitude from our community, from the national concerts, from anybody locally. So that's really helpful. Ronald Reagan was right. We can't help everyone, but we can help someone. So if we go to our own lives and we look at our own family and our community of whom we know, there's someone there that could use our support. So as we take care of ourselves and we take care of others, we still have that sense of community. Remember, we're not socially distant, but we're physically distant. We're asked to be feet away from each other, not ever speak to one another or ever show our kindness to one another. So that's important for us to keep in mind and reframe, because anxiety can be limiting, and depression can pull ourselves into ourselves as our isolation has been increased anyway. So we want to reduce our anxiety enough and remember the tips that Donna gave us and implement them so that we can have our balance and feel our sense of resiliency and be able to proceed on the next day. Would we go to the next slide, please? This is an image that I found that really speaks to how I think we can imagine the rubble is the virus, the COVID virus, how it has upset our schools, upset our work, upset our households, upset the health professions, upset all of the first responders. Nobody has been escaped from that. And yet we are going to rise up. We are rising up. The human capacity to be resilient and to unleash our inner strength is there. And our spiritual communities are supporting us in that. And we in this seminar are trying to encourage you as well. I've asked Donna to go through an exercise with us. And let's see if we can all cooperate together emotionally with Donna at the moment.
I'd like everyone to take a moment, first of all, to just take in a deep breath, breathing in and exhaling. And with your eyes closed or open, I'd like to read you a beautiful blessing by the poet John O'Donohue. May there be kindness in your gaze when you look within. May you never place walls between the light and yourself. May your angel free you from the prisons of guilt, fear, disappointment, and despair. May you allow the wild beauty of the invisible world to gather you, mind you, and embrace you in belonging.
Thank you, Donna. That couldn't have been more than 30 seconds, and it really makes a difference. Here on the screen, I want to remind you of how we take care of our family and our home and ourselves, and our local resources are there for us. We have an emotional support hotline. We have the Mental Health Association of Orange County, who has created a 24-hour crisis line for us. There is a pathway to care that services youth and children who have mental health, and their phone numbers are here. Our New York State level has given us emotional support hotlines and healthcare provider hotlines for anyone who feels that they are maxed out and needs to reach out and get some additional strength and support from one another. The agency Hospice of Orange is here for you, and the local resources are. And that's not all. Here in our nation, there are many resources that have wanted to try to support us throughout the nation. Remember that we have a hotline for the mentally ill, a suicide prevention line, a post-traumatic stress psychological first aid guide, and the Child Traumatic Stress Network. These are just some of the national resources and state resources that are available to us, and we should not hesitate to use them when we feel we need them. This seminar will be posted on our hospice website for you to share with yourselves, your family, and anyone. We want you to know that we care about you. We are a part of your community. We are just a call away. Use the telephone number that's here listed on the screen. That's our main number. They will guide you to anyone who can help you in the resources that you need. We are just a phone call away. Thank you for your attention. I thank Donna and Erica for your work. These are the references of the guidance that we had when we made this seminar for you. We appreciate the time. We want you to know that we share in your community, and we're pleased to have this conversation with you. Thank you.